Hello, everyone. I'm Jennie Graham. I'm the current math coordinator at Las Positas College, one of the math faculty, and have been the Math Emporium coordinator since 2015, I think. So I want to start with basically a little history about Emporium model. You two may or may not be familiar with it, but I figured I would start with just kind of a general definition. And again, a little history. So the Emporium model was first developed back in '99 by Virginia Tech, and then spawned throughout the country. It's basically defined as a system where students get to pick how quickly they move through the content. It eliminates the class-wide lecture. It replaces them with online learning resources. Depending on the program, they use different kinds of resources, I'll just say that. And then it also depends heavily on one-on-one interaction with students and faculty, students and staff. It requires dedicated space, dedicated time. It's a commitment. So back in 2007, when the community colleges were doing their best to try and help students complete their basic skills classes in math, the faculty at Las Positas decided an Emporium model might be just the way to do that. We have a situation where students can self-pace, or another way of looking at it is self-accelerate through the content. So when we had students placing 3 levels below a transfer level math class, it made sense to let them, if they placed into pre-algebra, say, then go as quickly as they wanted to through that content, maybe finish pre-algebra, and then also finish elementary algebra, beginning algebra. We had students finishing multiple classes in one semester, which was great. It allowed them to overcome that misplacement, if you will, and make it through to their transfer level class. On the other side of that coin, though, we also had students, if they needed a little more time to really wrap their head around concepts, maybe they've been out of school for 20 years, or it's been even just a couple of years since their last high school math class, these students were allowed to take their time and learn the content, and whatever progress they made that semester actually carried through to the next semester. So they were always able to keep their progress and felt good about what they were doing. In order to do this, though, we did first have to convince the administrators that this was the right way to go. So there was a campus-wide effort to do that. We needed to have the proper space for it. We needed to have classified staff support and instructional assistance. And we needed to have our admissions and records group on board with that acceleration piece, right? Letting students complete more than one class in a semester. So it was a big ask in the beginning. So what we decided to do later on was improve it. It had been 2007 to 2015. We made minimal changes in our program. We had students who were doing exactly what we wanted them to do, which was great, but we had more students who were taking more semesters to complete the class instead of fewer semesters. So because of that, we needed to readjust. And what we looked at was that we just didn't have enough structure. Students were being allowed to basically do things as they pleased, and they would wind up pushing off the math in favor of something else. So while we wanted to celebrate the successes that students in our program had, we also acknowledged that some of it was doing more harm than good. So in 2015, we were awarded a HSI grant, and in that grant, part of what was written in there was improvement of our self-paced model. So what we wanted to do, which was called MathX at the time, I should say that. So what we started doing was looking at other colleges. And these are all live links to what they're currently doing, which is sort of similar to what they were doing years ago, but obviously with all the changes I'm about to talk about, they've also had to make adjustments. So close to home, we had Diablo Valley College. They're over here in Pleasant Hill. American River College up in Sacramento, they also have a very similar self-paced, at the time, similar self-paced math program for all of their basic skills math classes. And then making headlines was Austin Community College, the accelerator program that they were using for not only math, but other classes as well. And on their website here, they've got an amazing drone flyover video of their whole program, the structure that they use. It's pretty amazing, but I will let you guys watch that again. Those are all live links that you guys can take a look at a little later. So during our 1.5 years of research and development, we looked at what everyone else was doing. We took what we felt like we could reasonably incorporate, and we went with it. So we went from having just 2 sections on Monday, Wednesday, 2 sections on Tuesday, Thursday, to creating basically a block of time Monday through Thursday from 9:30 in the morning to 9:15 to create truly just a program. We wanted to have a space for students to go and work where they would have to take their class. They enrolled in a class, they take that class, but it was a space where they could come during anyone else's class time to work with our instructional assistants, to take tests, just to have a space, a quiet space to work and get help with their math. And so instead of just having these independent classes scheduled randomly throughout the day on opposite days of the week, we created this environment. We created this space, the sticky space for students. We collaborated with Pearson Publishing to create an online platform using their using their MyLab Math environment that allowed the students to have more structure, which again, we felt like we needed, and more purpose to their assignments. So students would take a, what we called a knowledge check, a pre-test, that would then personalize the homework they had left based on what they knew about the content. And remember, this is all our basic skills math classes, where a lot of these students already knew a lot of this material. They were misplaced, or they misplaced themselves because they didn't have that confidence that they needed to continue. So it personalized their homework, and then when they would test, if they didn't quite meet the level that we wanted of an understanding to move on, then it would personalize their review. We also enhanced the course with growth mindset materials. It's the materials that we've all seen over the last decade of incorporating those soft skills into our classes of what is growth mindset, time management, testing anxiety, going through our curve of forgetting, right? How does our memory work? How do we learn? With the goal to help our students just become better college students and then offer some insight into how they learn. So we were using this opportunity in our classes to not only help them with the math, but again, to help them just become better college students. Prior to our big shift, there wasn't a lot of attention paid to what the students were actually doing in their classes. And part of this was on the faculty who had taken on these classes as light classes where they didn't have to do any grading. And it was a different mindset for the faculty. So we had to change that as a department. We had to get people in these classes who had the mindset to be not just the instructors, but academic coaches to help the students understand how to progress through the course, remain aware of how much they had left to complete, how much time was left to complete it, what were the challenges they were facing, how can we overcome those challenges to continue making progress through the course. Do you want to complete the course in 1 semester, or do you think it would be more beneficial to go ahead and spread it out over 2 semesters? So it became less of a light class and more of a class where you did have to devote the same amount of time to those students as you would in any other lecture class, where you're prepping and grading and all that other fun stuff that we didn't have to do in an Emporium class. So we had to make that shift. Let's see here. I could have lost my spot. As we started to collect our data on these classes. Our goal was that we wanted to have our Emporium classes, which is what we're branding now instead of Math X. We wanted to have these classes be at least as successful as our lecture classes. And most of you may remember that the pass rate in lecture classes was still not great for across the state, right? Going from a pre-algebra class up through a intermediate algebra class into transfer level wasn't amazing. But the Math X classes were even worse. So again, we were trying to at least get up to those lecture classes, and if not be better than them, right? Is hopefully where we were going. So after running our data in spring of 2017, so a full academic year for us after we started this new revamped program, we were super excited. It was way better than what we had originally done in our MathX program, and we were closer to our lecture classes, which was great. However, there were some big changes coming to the state around that time, with multiple measures placement, followed very quickly by AB 705, followed very quickly by the memo to AB 705, followed very quickly by AB 1705, shifting to open educational resources, and a pandemic that forced us to go from being in person to online. So over the course of the last several years, we haven't really had a chance to catch our breath much, right? So what are we doing now? No more basic skills, right? We've got a shift towards this equity and learning centered opportunities that we can use our Emporium model for. So we transition out of basic skills, no more basic skills, and we saw our Emporium model as an opportunity to help those less prepared students who are now joining our college be successful in their transfer level math classes. This is a link to our current Emporium webpage. So when you get that, you can take a look at that. So instead of our basic skills classes, right, our pre-algebra, elementary algebra, intermediate algebra classes, our pre-transfer level classes, we've got all or most of our transfer level courses in an Emporium mode. So this is our college algebra, this is our math for liberal arts, this is our statistics, this is trigonometry. So we plan on adding in a few more courses, but we've got to catch our breath. We got to figure out how to do that successfully. So for right now, this is what we're working on. We, as of fall 2022, ran our first semester, and it was interesting. It was a neat shift to what we were doing. While we did enjoy the polished nature of our Pearson products that we were using for my lab math, it was expensive for students. It changed nearly every 3 years. We had to update something, which meant we were putting faculty time and effort into updating all of our online resources. Students were potentially buying new course book editions. It wasn't as flexible as we needed. And it was too constrictive. It wasn't as customizable as we needed, even though Pearson likes to say that they're super customizable, but it just wasn't working for us. There's also this big push to go with open educational resources, right, for equity purposes across the state. And our faculty agreed with this 100%. So we're shifting everything to LibreText, or we already have shifted quite a bit of it. And again, just a link to the LibreText site. And we've also shifted our online learning platform to MyOpenMath, which we love as a platform for the community that is there in terms of faculty helping faculty. It is completely customizable. It has a developer who is totally responsive and willing to have input and will help. It fully integrates into most online delivery systems for your colleges, whether it be Canvas, Desire to Learn, Blackboard. It fits right into those online delivery systems as well. So we found it to be something that we've really enjoyed working with. There is a bit of a learning curve with any of this, but it was something that we felt was essential to help our students, right? We changed our format. We used to purely be in person, come to campus, work with us, test with us, be in person. But with, of course, the pandemic, we felt like we wanted to keep some of that online flexibility. So we've transitioned our Emporium model to be what we call a high flex format, where students can choose to be in the classroom or they can choose to log in from their bedroom, right? Which with our policy of being open from 9:30 to 9:15 Monday through Thursday means that if the student's only taking Tuesday, Thursday classes, they're now more likely to be able to get help on a Monday, Wednesday when they can just join us from home. So we've expanded this notion of students being able to get help whenever they want in this format. Each of our sections is cross-listed. We've always had this even when we were doing our basic skills. But what this means is that all 8 of our sections that we offer, each one has our college algebra, our trigonometry, our math 40, and our math 40, our statistics and our math for liberal arts class in them. What this allows us to do is have students be more or allows for more flexibility in scheduling for the students. So if they start with us in the fall, they need to finish with us in the spring, and it doesn't fit with what they originally took in the fall, they just take it with somebody else at a different time in the spring. So we have more options for students to be able to continue their material. It also allows for consistency of help. If every instructor in all of our sections is aware of the material in all 4 of those classes. So you don't have one section where you're going to be able to get your college algebra trigonometry help and another section where you can only get statistics and math for liberal arts help. Those IAs and those instructors, they can help with any of the topics. So again, it creates this uniform learning environment. Students go to Emporium, they know they can get help with whatever they need, right? As part of those Emporium courses. It's different for us now in terms of going from basic skills classes to our transfer classes. In our basic skills classes, we're really encouraging students to work quickly through the content that they knew, right? Let's accelerate. And obviously, take the time where you need it. But it's a very different shift with our transfer classes, because now we have students coming into the course where, again, it's still been 20 years since they've been out of school, and they're now starting in college algebra, they're starting in statistics, or even just a couple years out of high school, but the last class they took was maybe Algebra 1, which means they've never seen intermediate algebra, and now we're putting them in a college algebra class, right? So we're now looking more at, if you look at that first section and you aren't sure what's going on, let's take the time to figure out where the holes that we need to help you fill. And because it's self-paced, because the students can take that time, we can do that without them feeling anxious about getting behind, right? Because again, there really are no due dates in the class. They're just working at their own pace. They're trying to figure out what they know, what they don't know, and how to fill those holes. And so they sit down with their instructor, they sit down with an instructional assistant, and they spend some time on some of those foundational topics that they might have missed. And so we are always coaching students as you're going through that material. If you hit something where you're not sure how they went from point A to point B, put a little note, ask about it, because they may be doing a lecture outside of class. And so they need to ask when they come to class or when they have time to hop into a Zoom, whatever. So it's a different kind of coaching that we're finding with our transfer level students as we're going through this. So as I mentioned, last fall was when we first launched all the transfer level classes, and we had some really great success stories. Students did just fine. They rocked right through it. It was wonderful. And we had some students though who took their time. They did not complete the whole class last semester. So they're with us again this semester, and they're finishing off the course ideally. But those students, they would have been in that group of students who they weren't successful their first semester in a transfer level math class. And imagine how frustrating that would be then if that student now had to start all over the next semester. So with us, with our Emporium mode, that student has now saved all that valuable work they did in semester in the fall, and they get to take it with them into spring. And they haven't wasted any time. It all feels like success to them because they've just been making progress, right? And they're going to continue to make progress. So what we're interested in seeing, of course, now that we're in this transfer level mindset, and of course the state wants us to say, you know, students are going to be at least a year to get through a transferable math class, and that's acceptable. Then what we've got is, how are they doing in the more traditional classes versus how are they doing in our Emporium class? So we're going to be comparing that. How many students were successful in those versus our Emporium? Are they about the same? One better than the other? Who knows? But that's what we're going to be looking at to see what we're doing there. Okay, so we've transitioned. That's where we are. What I wanted to do was show you guys basically what their online learning platform looks like and what the students will see. Before I do that, though, are there any questions about anything we kind of talked about so far? There don't have to be, but I wanted to pause. Okay, so let me stop this guy. How do I do that? There we go. So what I did was I picked our college algebra course. As I mentioned earlier, I think, we use Canvas at Las Positas. And when the students log in, they have an orientation page that walks them through what to do on the first day of class. And this is a live class, so it's a synchronous class. So students are either in class or they're with us online via Zoom. And we spend some time going through what to do. But again, it's self-paced. So we kind of want to set that mindset day one, where they need to be able to read, follow the directions, work through the content at their own pace. And so they can take their time to go through the welcome videos, read through their syllabus, do the orientation assignments, etc. We have them practice online skills. We have them practice discussion board skills, all on that very first day, just to get a sense of what they're doing. We have them select the module they're currently working on. If they're new, module 1. If they're continuing, though, they get to pick wherever it was they left off the last semester. One of the great things about Canvas is that we can have the students' information from last semester relatively easily imported into the new semester. So we keep that work as we go. And the students get to see that. So when they're in here, because we're in that high flex mode, we had to come up with a way for students to be able to not only ask for help while they're in classroom, which is pretty simple, raise a hand, or I'll walk around and give them a hand. But while they're online, how do we do that? So we just decided to use a Google form that basically says, tell us who you are you in the classroom, are you on Zoom, what do you need help with, how do we find you, basically. And the students actually tend to use this to preemptively get help with things too, where if they're checking in to get ready to take a test, they say, I'm signing in now and I would like help with this. And then our instructional assistants and our instructors have a sense of what they might need to do outside of that specific student's class time, because they're ready and they want to take advantage of the help. That way, when they get to class, they can immediately take their test or what have you, or review a practice test. So the Google form has become an interesting little bit of tech that we didn't think was going to be as useful as it was, which is kind of nice. So we have that there. We have obviously information about tutoring. We've got their textbook. We have it as a PDF form, their Zoom link, and reminders that they have their various participation assignments. But for the most part, our students are going to be working through their modules list here. So once they're through their orientation, and again, we just kind of have them practice a whole bunch of online skills just to get comfortable with that. Because even now we still have students who are coming back with little to no online skills. So it's an important aspect of it. But to encourage that participation and that motivation that we talked about lacking in the very beginning, one of the ideas that we developed over the last few years was, and again, because we had to shift online, was this incorporation of those online discussion boards. And even though we're a synchronous class, meaning, again, we're not technically online, so we don't technically need them, we felt like the discussion boards were a place to connect the students who were coming online, connect the students who were in person, get them just to practice stuff. And this is also where we put those soft skills that we used to have in our basic skills classes at the beginning of every chapter, where they were practicing things like time management and discussing tests and anxiety and whatnot. And we put them here as more of a communal assignment for the students to do. So they not only just help each other with the math, where they have to describe something they're working on, where they have to post a question about what they are working on, and then hopefully somebody else responds to it, right? So they have that camaraderie, but they help each other with how they're staying current with the course, or what they do for test preparation, or how do they deal with the stress towards the end of the semester. And a lot of these responses that students give each other are just so great. It's better than anything any faculty or instructional assistant could share. And it's something that we found to really help keep them engaged as a useful tool. And it's not something that we want them to take crazy amount of time on, but it is something that we want them to really think about. The other thing we're doing for keeping students engaged with their progress, right, is the check-in. So this is that development of changing our mindset to really being that academic coach, and it gives the students a place online to do this weekly check-in with us, where they're paying attention to what they've completed, what they've got left to complete, what were those challenges they were facing, what are their plans for catching up, if any. Maybe they've decided to spread it out. But it gives them that place to really talk with us about it in a written format, because we find that some students are fine just talking with you about it. They'll come up, they'll chat, we'll do these in person, it'll be fine. But other students really like that virtual written format where they don't have to have that face-to-face confrontation. And it allows them to just voice what they're doing, what they want to do. And we've been modifying these. This is something we're still playing with to this day of what do these look like? And they used to all be the same exact thing, and now each one's a little bit different, just to keep things interesting so they don't fall into a rut. But the participation assignments are where we're hoping to help with that motivation to continue and make progress in the course for those students who get the concepts, but they're just putting it off because there are no due dates, right? So this is what we're looking for. The way that they progress through the content, and again, we use our Canvas environment to kind of help with that structure that I mentioned earlier, that again, we found super lacking, and that we were able to use our Pearson platform to help with. And so now we use our Canvas and MyOpenMath to create essentially the same kind of structure, where we use the Canvas tools of prerequisiting and making a forced list order, just to kind of help keep students focused on what to do first. Otherwise, you're leaving yourself open to the I'm going to click on the to-do list, and that's the only way I'm going to figure out what I need to do. And our to-do list in Canvas, for those of you who don't use it, it's terrible because it doesn't put things in the actual order you want them to do them in. So the module listing like this, where they have the prerequisiting, is great. So this is where we have them go through, start at the beginning, and they just step through. We provide them with a lecture note packet on campus. They can just stop by and pick one up, or if they can't come to campus for whatever reason, they can, for a nominal fee, order a packet from the bookstore. If they really want, they can write it up, they can print it out, they can do whatever, but they do actually have to take notes. That's something that we check later on. So they have their note packet, we have their textbooks linked as they need it, as they go through the various modules. We have their section videos that they're using to fill in. Again, this is college algebra, so we've got our big old pile of, let's talk about some prerequisite material before you dive in. And after they've completed their videos, what we want to do is have them practice their homework. So this is our MyOpenMath integration. And again, if you aren't familiar with it, it's an amazingly easy thing to use, which is great. And it really seamlessly integrates into Canvas, which is also really great. But the way this will work is the students start it, and they go through question by question by question. It has the normal math palette, depending on how the questions were coded. And then all of this here, if you wanted, is completely customizable. So one of the things you'll note on this, for those of you more familiar with the publisher software, there isn't a help me solve this or view an example on this page anywhere. But we could very easily add one. And part of our polishing process that we're working on as a department is using some of our time and resources to go through and create those videos or find videos that have already been made and are public on YouTube for practice and study and sharing out that show students how to do these. Obviously, we did in our videos leading up to this, but it's nice to have that help in the moment while you're working on it. So one of the things that we can do is add in those helps as we go. And again, depending on who coded the question, some of those helps are already there. And the question's been coded in, there's help coded in, and the students can click on it and get help as they need. We have our homework set at a 80% completion rate. We felt like that was good enough to give students a sense of, are they understanding the topics, and not force them to do more than they feel they need to do so that they start resenting working on that material. 100% just felt like it was, it might be too much. They were getting it, they understood it. Why did they have to keep doing it? So 80% we felt like was a good place to put them at. And it also lets them know whether or not they need more practice, so they could finish that other 20% if they want. So we have that set for an 80% completion before they can move on to the next chapter or the next section. When they do that, it's basically just rinse, repeat. They watch the next video, they do the next homework assignment, so on and so forth, right? So they would proceed through the material as they go. Because our classes do have a lab component, we also have built-in lab assignments. And we use these, again, kind of as a learning opportunity, where the students are trying everything on their own. They upload their work. It unlocks the next assignment that has a key in it, with just answer key, not fully worked out solutions, so that they can check their answers, along with tips for like what kind of work you should see. And then they correct it. And if they didn't get it right, they need to ask for help. They need to get it fully corrected. These labs are part of their course grade, unlike the homework. So ideally, they're spending time figuring out what went wrong. And then they continue, okay? We're always trying to build in these moments of what have you picked up so far? What could we go back and review? Let's get you comfortable with some of these concepts before we keep going, right? And we use the labs as a way to do that, also as a way to build on certain concepts, right? To maybe make something a little more challenging that was in the homework. They progress. Our module one's a little longer for college algebra because we've got some prereqs in here. And then we have them upload their notes, or if they're in the classroom, they can just show us their notes just to verify that they actually watched the videos, they learned things. And then we have them do their practice test. Practice test is something they need to earn a 90% on, but it's a rough 90%. So they take the test, they upload their work, they review it with an instructional assistant, or they review it with their instructor. And we're looking for things like, why did they lose points? It's a computer. It marks things right or wrong. So if the work looked good, it was just a minor error, it doesn't matter so much. If it was a concept issue, we talk about the concept and we see what level of concept issue it was. Is it really worth making them take the entire practice test again? Or can we just recommend some study before they take the real test? So they're not meant to be this barring assessment. It's supposed to be a moment of, are you really ready? And we always encourage them to take that practice test without notes. So if they do get 100%, there's still a conversation where we still ask them, okay, well, help me understand how you did this question. And then if it comes out, well, I used my notes for it, we say, why don't we try it one more time without the notes, right? Let's see where we're really at. So it's that constant academic coaching of, let's be real with ourselves, right? What do we need to know in order to be successful at this? When they get to their test, they do that either in the classroom with our proctoring, in our proctored room that's attached to our space, or we allow for them to be proctored online, but everything's proctored. Students are made aware of this prior to joining our class, so they have a choice to do someone else's class if they don't want that online proctoring. But everybody is proctored one way or the other. After the test happens, then they always meet with us. It's regardless of how you did, you're going to sit down, you're going to meet with your instructor, and your instructor is going to do basically a finalization of your score. We're going to look at how you did, how you explain things, if something was missed, why was it missed. And so students always know going into that test that the score they earn is not the score they're going to get, right? That's just a starting offer. We're gonna see where we can go from there. And we have that dialogue with them. We have them explain things, right? And even if it's a day later that they've taken the test, if I'm sitting down with that student and they can show understanding of that concept a day later, I'm okay with that. Let's give them the points. Now they understand it. I'm fine with that. They've taken the time to review something that they weren't sure about on the test. I'm going to reward that. That's the kind of student behavior that you want. You want that learning behavior, right? So when we sit down with these tests, that's what we're going for. If the student doesn't score our required score, we give them a personalized review. We tell them exactly what to work on, why they're focusing on those skills, not just because they didn't earn the score, but why we need them to focus on those skills. And then they try again, right? So when they're going into these tests, we're trying to alleviate that test anxiety of, oh no, what if I fail? Because again, it's always just, that's your starting offer. We're going to go up from there, right? So that aspect of it, I think, is very important to really sit down with the students and really understand that part of their anxiety over testing. We do have it set at a 70%. We used to have 80% with our basic skills because we felt like that was a better percentage for what they were going to need to build upon in their following classes. But when we started the 70% last semester, it was actually one of these moments where we had students who would have otherwise felt stuck in classes like statistics or math for liberal arts, where there was just one module in that class that didn't have anything to do with any other module, where they were just stuck. So with that 70%, they were able to then move on to another module and keep going, successfully completing the course. With our college algebra and our trigonometry, where there is a little more of a sequencing there, we're still kind of on the fence about whether or not we like that 70%. So we have plans. We'll get to that in a second. They continue modules until they get through their final. And as we saw, as we talked about earlier, there are no due dates, but we have them do those check-ins. And one of the things they're always paying attention to is their calendar that we've provided for them. So when we have them looking at these calendars, one of the things they're always paying attention to is roughly when are these tests scheduled. And if we push too many of these tests back, maybe we're not going to finish the whole class. So we talk about, well, what's your goal? What's your end date? What do we want to say for next semester? And we coach them through that. So that's where we are right now with our online environment. Are there questions on any of this before we kind of continue and jump into where we're going and how we did all this? Yeah, Hugo?
Can everybody hear me?
I can.
Okay. All right. I really like the way you have that calendar set up. Is that inside of Canvas?
This is actually a Google Calendar. It's a
Okay.
Google Sheet.
Right.
And what we do is we have it as part of we have it in two places. So we have it on just basically part of their syllabi orientation, where we just have that calendar linked as part of their walkthrough.
Mm-hmm.
And then what we do is we have them in their very, very first check-in assignment. We have directions for taking that calendar, whether they're in a Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday class. It doesn't change all that much, but students like that distinction. But anyway, we have directions for how to take the calendar that we're looking at here, make their own personal copy of it. And all of our students, our school email is essentially Gmail. So they all have a Gmail account. And as long as they're logged in, they can make a copy. It's saved to their drive. And now it becomes editable, and they're just kind of messing with it throughout the semester to just keep track of what's left, right? So we have it as part of that orientation learning process with the check-in. And it's something that we'll ask the students to pull up while we're talking with them on their progress or whatever else. And so they have a very clear visualization of what's left and how much time we've got left.
I really like that. Another question is, what have you seen as far as like the data? What have there been any significant barriers that have come up that are, consistent across the board?
So that's a hard question to answer right now because, like I said, we just shifted to online these transfer level classes this semester. Okay. So what we've got basically coming up is we're hoping at the end of the year we can take a look, like I said, and see how do we compare. From historical data, what we mostly saw was honestly students having struggling the most with just motivation, staying on top of it. So one of the things that we're doing, and I'll talk about this in a little more detail, is figuring out how to improve that motivation. So we're working on that. But that's the biggest barrier that we've seen so far, is just for those students who get the content to get them to actually do the work. So that's one of the biggest struggles so far is getting them to do that.
I think that everybody across the entire universe is going through that, those issues as far as motivating students. I know that when we went on distance learning, my daughters were struggling with that, and that was something that they were very open about. They discussed the lack of motivation, and wanting to even do the homework or be in a distance learning Zoom meeting. So that was huge for I think everyone struggled with that.
I think so. I mean, even in a classic non-self-paced class, it's something that we continue to struggle with. I just noticed what time it was. So moving on for this one, right? So how are we doing this at our school? So we do have a dedicated space each semester with computers and an attached testing center. And that's ours. We have it. No one else gets to use it. It's the Emporium's space. That's super key, is just to have a space where students know they can go. We have dedicated sections, as I mentioned earlier, same days, same times, nothing changes. That consistency for students, especially if they're continuing to the next semester. Again, very, very important for scheduling purposes. As much as possible, we also try to keep the same instructors working. So if a student really jives with a student, if an instructor really, or student really jives with an instructor, then they can go back to that instructor. They don't need to learn the new quirks of another instructor. They can be comfortable with somebody they've just spent a whole semester with. And we also have students who will follow that instructor from class to class to class. So last semester we had a bunch of students in our college algebra class who've now shown up in our trig classes because they like that environment and they liked working with you as an instructor. And so they have that consistency, which again, I think is really, really important. Instructional assistants. We are lucky enough to have 3 math-focused instructional assistants that we had to beg, borrow, and plead for. But we did finally get them. And thankfully we got them when there was a upturn in the budget. And we're continually justifying keeping them as the budgets are getting tighter. But they allow for that open lab feel, as opposed to a classroom that becomes, dead within the 45 minutes between each class. So those instructional assistants are in there helping students, and in much the same way an instructor does, where they're also coaching, they're also talking about progress, they're also talking about what's next. They have as much knowledge as our instructors do about best ways to get through the class, to stay motivated, to stay on top of the material. They are an essential part, I will say. Centralized course hubs. So because we use Canvas, we are using Canvas's blueprint courses. So what I showed you all a moment ago was the blueprint course for college algebra. We use those blueprint courses to structure everything. We associate individual instructors' classes, Canvas classes, with those blueprints, and then everything gets pushed out. So if there's any changes throughout the semester, you fix it in the blueprint, you push it out. It keeps everything consistent from semester to semester to semester, from instructor to instructor. All of the instructors and staff work on these courses, so there's buy-in in all parts of it, all the structure, all the assignments. Everybody is in it. They understand the assignment, so to speak, where we want to make these environments useful for our students. Now, as I mentioned a little bit ago, our success rates are always in question. So we're constantly having to have buy-in from our administrators, where we're touting the goals of our Emporium class, why we need it, why it has to stay, why we need the space, why we need the people. So there is that constant championing, you guys know what I'm trying to say, of that class. So we do need that. And as I mentioned, we're hoping that as we reach the end of this year, we can see that it is just at least as successful as our lecture traditional class counterparts. Right now, we're hopeful that based on all the lessons we've learned over the last several years through our basic skills and transitioning into the transfer classes, that our current model will be an asset to students. However, as I was saying a moment ago, we also already have plans for polishing it, though. So instead of being a state imposed change, we want to make some changes ourselves. So what can we do better? Where are we at? So motivation, like I was just saying a moment ago, that's one of the big things that we need to see improved. And one of the big differences that we know between a more traditional course and an Emporium course is those traditional courses have due dates. Students have the motivation because there is a set date in their brains, I've got to finish this class. We can't do that in a self-paced class, right? It's the whole idea that it's a self-paced class. So we can give them a model schedule to follow, as you guys saw on the calendar, but there's no forcing them to do it by that particular time. It's a matter of just encouraging them to go down that route. So what we've been doing and experimenting with is having those improved check-ins where we're getting them to be more aware of it. And already last semester, we did see a big increase in the students being aware of what they had left to do. There were conversations earlier in the semester about how to catch up, or I'm going to adjust from a full class finish to a partial class finish. So they're definitely more aware. We also have the test dates, the proposed test dates in Canvas on that to-do list, so that students can actually see that. Because again, they love their to-do list, and if something isn't there, they think they don't have anything to do. So we figure at the very least, if we put those test dates there, they'll go, oh yeah, that's coming up, I better do things. And they go through and they work on it. So we've got that. Advertising. This is another big challenge, is getting the right students in this mode. We get students who will pick it just because it's a day and time that they like, and it looks like it might be a lecture class, and they're not reading the notes for the course that it's an Emporium class, and what does that mean? So we do our best to email classes every semester. Hey, this is what you've signed up for. There's still time to sign up for something else if this doesn't sound right for you. But better communication with counseling, admissions and records, student groups, just to kind of get the word out about what the different learning modes are. And on our Emporium website that I linked earlier, there's a whole video about what the different learning modes are. So we're trying to be better about advertising the different kinds of course modalities, the async, the high flex, the traditional in person, the Emporium. So students actually pick the right class, which is essential. And then the last thing, which is probably the biggest thing, is what about the other 30% of material in each module? So we have a 70% module completion rate before you can move on. And as long as they get a 70% in the course, they pass the course. And we're okay-ish with that, again, with courses like our stats, like our math for lib, where there's, again, those different pockets of modules that they don't really have anything to do with each other. But when a course is sequentially important, we worry about that other 30%. So one of the plans that we have for this semester moving forward is we're looking more towards changing our Emporium structure to more of a competency-based grading or a standards-based grading, where we're going to have our list of these are the things we want you to learn in the course. You need to learn this many things to pass the course. And it takes it away from you need to earn a certain percentage on a given module to here are the things you need to learn from this module. And they need to learn at least this many things from that module before they can move on. And then by the end of the semester, if they haven't shown understanding of those various competencies, their final exam becomes an opportunity to go back and improve and pick up those competencies or those standards that they haven't quite gotten yet. And so this semester, we're getting our, at least ideally, we're getting our faculty together to take on a course and really look at, well, what are the competencies, what are the standards from this course? And we already have some faculty doing this, especially with college algebra. We already have somebody who's done it for a few years now. And they have a sense of how that works and how that looks. And I think with an Emporium model like this, giving a students a checklist, so that calendar becomes more of a, here's a standards list, here's, you know, the modules or the sections where you're going to learn these standards, and they can go through and they just kind of check them off. And they know I need to know this many before I can finish the class. It feels like the right way to go with this. And it also gives us a better sense of what our learning outcomes for the classes are going to be, right? If we're seeing that this is a standard that students are always skipping and always missing, that's clearly something we need to figure out, right? So it not only helps the students have a better sense of our expectations, but it's going to give us a better sense of where are we not supporting them well enough with that standard that we feel is important. So that's where we're going with it. That's what we're thinking. That's what we want to do. It's going to take a couple of years, but we're gonna see what happens. So yeah. Any other questions? Comments? I'm going to take a drink of my tea. All right, well, that's all I have for you guys today. It's about 12:15, so if I can't remember if there's a break right now or if there's another session, but I think that's all the time that we have today. If you do have more questions, feel free to email me. I'm happy to do so. My email is on the slide. And again, ideally this will be shared out. Oh, done. That's not what I meant to do. Slideshow. Ideally this will be shared out. So if you guys want to reach out with questions, feel free. Happy to update you with our progress or share any of our strategies and what we're doing. So yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate you taking your time out to come listen.